Hey everyone, and welcome back to a new unit review. Today we're taking a closer look at Ifrit, one of the two starters that every new player gets to choose from during their first week in Dragon Traveler. Because of that, this isn't really a should you summon type of review, because chances are almost everyone watching this video has summoned her multiple times anyway. The real question is, how far should you actually invest into Ifrit in the beginning of the game, and does she have late game potential? Should you stop after getting your first copy? Is Divinity worth pushing? Or should you simply use her as an early game carry before saving your resources for the upcoming global schedule? That is exactly what we will answer in today's review, and we will go through her entire kit, discuss her strengths and weaknesses, look at her best gear and team options, and finally decide just how much investment Ifrit is actually worth in the current state of Dragon Traveler. So with that being said, let's get started. As always, let's first take a quick look at what Ifrit actually brings to the table. Ifrit is an archer belonging to both the Elemental Echo and Arcane Wisdom factions. Her main role is dealing large amounts of physical AoE damage and making her one of the strongest early game wave clear units. Unlike many newer carries though, Ifrit is designed to be surprisingly self-sufficient. Instead of relying heavily on teammates, a large part of her kit revolves around building up her own mechanics and empowering herself throughout the battle. This makes her incredibly effective during the early stages of the game, where team compositions are still limited and most players simply need a character that can carry story, PvE, and even arena by herself. But as we will see throughout this review, being self-sufficient also comes with a few drawbacks once your account starts progressing into the later stages of the game. So with that basic overview out of the way, let's jump into her talent. Whenever Ifrit deals physical damage to the same target 3 times, she immediately triggers an additional hit of physical damage based on her attack. It's a very straightforward passive, but it fits her kit very well. Since almost all of her abilities hit multiple times, she's able to trigger this extra attack quite consistently throughout the fight. What I like about this talent is its simplicity. There are no complicated conditions or team requirements. You simply keep attacking and you're rewarded with additional damage. Simple. It's another reason why Ifrit feels so strong during the early stages of the game, where raw damage is often all you need. When it comes to skills, Ifrit doesn't have really complicated skills or descriptions, which is why there isn't really room for deeper explanations or something like that. But let's start with Hexagram Ifrit's Overdrive. It fires a total of 16 firebolts across the battlefield, dealing massive AoE damage to every enemy. Although repeated hits on the same target deal reduced damage, it is still an incredibly effective skill for cleaning waves and putting pressure on multiple opponents at once. Next up is Firestorm, her ultimate skill. This ability creates a fiery vortex that repeatedly damages enemies while also applying Ignite. More importantly, every overdrive grants Ifrit an additional stack of Awakening, allowing Firestorm to increase from 4 hits all the way up to 8 hits. This means the skill naturally becomes stronger the longer the fight lasts. This skill also inherits Ifrit's only way to apply elemental debuffs. We will come back to this later. Her secret skill Frenzy is where a large part of her damage can come from. Besides granting a permanent attack increase, every stack of Awakening provides even more attack. It's another great example of how her entire kit rewards her for consistently building Awakening stack throughout the fight. Finally, we have her special skill Endless Flames. This skill launches an explosive fire shell, but its real strength comes from Awakening once again. For every stack she has, Ifrit fires an additional shell, allowing the ability to hit up to 5 times in total. It scales extremely well with the rest of her kit and gives her even more consistent AoE damage. As you can probably tell by now, every single one of Ifrit's abilities revolves around Awakening. It is a very simple but effective design that makes her easy to play while still allowing her damage to ramp up naturally over the course of the battle. In blue teams, of course. As always, let's take a quick look at Ifrit's star upgrades. Level 2 reduces the energy cost of her next overdrive after triggering an elemental reaction. This allows her to access Hexagram more frequently and improves her overall damage output. Although, as already mentioned earlier, she can only apply elemental debuffs with her ultimate skill. Level 3 is a simple but effective stat upgrade, granting additional attack and critical hit, which are both valuable for a damage dealer like Ifrit. Level 4 introduces one of the few utility effects in her kit. Whenever Flame Brand is triggered, she has a chance, 50%, to apply physical defense down. This is actually her only consistent debuff, but this will help getting through strong tanks in the early stages of the game. And finally level 7, and this is by far the most important one for Ifrit. It reduces the cooldown of Hexagram whenever Flame Brand is triggered. Since her overdrive is the strongest part of her kit, this upgrade significantly improves her consistency and damage throughout longer fights. This also enhances the chances of getting the physical defense debuff more consistent on the enemy. Finally level 7, and this is by far the most important one for Ifrit. It reduces the cooldown of Hexagram, her overdrive, whenever Flame Brand, her talent, is triggered. Since her overdrive is the strongest part of her kit, this upgrade significantly improves her consistency and damage throughout longer fights. This also enhances the chances of getting the physical defense down debuff more consistently on the enemy. She needs 3 instances of physical damage on an enemy, which is done by her AoE overdrive, which she now uses more frequently with this upgrade. Overall, her star upgrades are fairly straightforward. They mainly focus on increasing her damage output and making her overdrive available more often, which is definitely nice for her. Now let's move on to Ifrit's Divinity upgrades. The first Divinity levels are mostly straightforward stat upgrades as always. You will find additional attack, critical hit, attack speed, and a bit of magic defense, all of which help increase her overall damage and consistency. The real highlight though, of course, is level 6. Although this is in my opinion not good enough to go for, considering the investment costs, right? Her divine skill immediately applies 1 stack of Flame Brand to every enemy at the start of battle. This gives Ifrit access to her Flame Brand related effects way earlier in the fight, and you have a better chance to consistently apply the physical defense debuff since the OD hits random targets multiple times. This might sound pretty cool, but it really isn't something to worry about in my opinion. I have also seen like no one, not even the spenders, getting her to that level even after 3 months of playing on my server. So it's just not worth the resources, right? And it's also just 1 stack of Flame Brand, so you need an additional 2, right? Next, let's take a look at Ifrit's recommended gear. For the armor pieces, I recommend running the Ranger's crit set, while Last Whisper is your best weapon choice thanks to its penetration bonus. And as for accessory, Eagle Warrior Portrait is the preferred option here, as it provides another valuable damage increase for Ifrit. If you don't have access to these pieces yet, don't worry too much. The attack set as an alternative shown here is perfectly viable while you're progressing throughout the game. But this setup is what I would aim for the long run. When it comes to substats, your priority is pretty straightforward. Critical hit and critical damage should be your main focus, followed by attack to further increase her damage output. While Ifrit scales extremely well with attack, her kit already provides several attack increases, making crit a great way to further raise her overall damage ceiling, and also crit synergizes really well with her recommended subclass and noble Phantasm. Finally, haste and attack speed are both valuable as well, allowing Ifrit to cycle through her abilities more quickly while also synergizing nicely with her awakening mechanic. Overall, there really aren't any surprises here, I think. Just focus on maximizing her offensive stats and you will get the most out of her kit. Moving on to Ifrit's Noble Phantasm, because I actually think it synergizes really well with her kit. The first upgrade is definitely the biggest power spike. Every skill now consumes 1 stack of Awakening to gain a 27% damage increase, while Firestorm, Frenzy and Endless Flames now scale with the amount of Awakening stacks gained instead of the amount currently held. This makes her damage much more consistent and removes one of the biggest downside of consuming Awakening stacks in general. On top of that, Frenzy can now stack up to 9 times, giving her even more attack during longer fights. This upgrade is really good in an Arcane team setup. The second upgrade is a bit more situational. Critical basic attacks have a 60% chance to apply 1 stack of Flamebrand. It's a nice bonus that improves Flamebrand's uptime, but on its own it doesn't fundamentally change how Ifrit plays. However, it is nice that she now benefits from a full crit gear set, right? Finally, the third upgrade increases the damage dealt by additional hits of Hexagram against the same target from 20% to 28%. This noticeably improves her single target damage, making her overdrive more effective against bosses while still retaining its excellent AoE potential. Overall, I would say the first stage is by far the most impactful, while the second and third stages are nice improvements, but much more gradual. If you're planning to invest into Ifrit's Noble Phantasm, the first upgrade gives you the biggest return by far. Which is nice, right? Because this means you don't have to go out of your way in terms of star upgrades. And I've also seen many people saying her Noble Phantasm is bad. I personally think that this exclusive relic is very nice and fits perfectly into her kit. It is just that Ifrit herself doesn't put out the numbers or utility to justify going for it specifically in the shop, right? But if you get it randomly by luck, then I think this is a very fitting piece to her kit and nothing to be upset about, to be honest. Next is her subclass, and my recommendation is Light Ranger. The reason is pretty simple. Since Ifrit heavily invests into critical hit, she can trigger the additional light arrows very consistently, resulting in a nice increase to her overall damage output. As for the other tier 3 options, I don't think they are nearly as reliable. Bloodhunter depends on maintaining buffs, which Ifrit simply doesn't have enough of to make full use of the subclass, and Sniper, on the other hand, is far too enemy dependent. It can perform well in certain situations, but it's nowhere near as consistent as Light Ranger. This is simply something you cannot control in a fight. Overall, Light Ranger is the subclass I would recommend in almost every situation, thanks to its reliability and excellent synergy with Ifrit's playstyle and gearing. Next up for teams. First of all, the positioning should be very obvious. You want to play her in the back line since her class-specific effects gives her more damage when playing in the back, right? And as always, the team setup section is where we cannot get around some of her downsides. However, when it comes to the beginner setup in the first 2 weeks or so, then this would be a recommended lineup for the Elemental Echoes team. And honestly, this is pretty decent when you start the game. You have naturally high star level on the entire front lane, a decent healer, and you get one of the best CX characters added to your squad for free. Fenrir would be a $1 investment, but you can also play something like Laureline or Melina. Even though this setup can function pretty well in early stages, the Elemental Echo team usually want to inflict elemental debuffs with a good amount of CC also, right? And endgame Elemental Echo teams are mainly built around applying these elemental reactions in order to control the fight. In this beginner setup, however, we cannot provide the consistent amount of these at all. Remember, Ifrit can only apply Ignite when she activates her ultimate skill, not even her overdrive. So let's have a look at the current and upcoming characters and how they can potentially link up. And oh boy, since Ifrit is a rather selfish, but at least self-sufficient luminary, she has like no synergy with either existing characters like Zagreus, Mordred, Thor, nor with the most likely upcoming characters in the near future like Salome, Hermes, and Catherine. Even if we look at the game in 5 to 6 months, Zeus, Sate, or Executioner, or whatever she's called now, there are different translations, or Lupin are not linking well with Ifrit, and all because of the same problem. Ifrit is a physical damage based carry that is not able to contribute in any form for the elemental reaction setup. 8 out of 9 characters here are magic damage based, so no one except Lupin benefits from her only debuff. But Lupin, on the other hand, heavily focuses on elemental reactions, unlike Ifrit. There are also just far superior units to play for Ignite, like Vermilion Bird, for example. And to be honest, even Siegfried can do it better because you can abuse the early game high star level of her to PU her overdrive and inflict Ignite there. So yeah, if Ifrit would also apply Ignite with her overdrive, then I think this would be a completely different story. Okay, but if you still want to play her in an Elemental Echo team, you can do some adjustments like Dwalin for Oberoni, Orion for more physical damage, and also heal down utility, and Vivian to support Ifrit's damage, of course. Still, this is far from a recommended setup. The better solution when focusing on Ifrit in a team setup would be playing her in an Arcane Wisdom team. Not only does her skill set benefit way more when playing with the units that can generate awakening stacks for her, but she can also be a very viable option even now. The current possible setup is as follows. We have a nice and not forced physical based setup with a few very meta relevant characters, right? Like Pompey and Artemis. And when it comes to the X characters you should play, definitely just go for the ones with the highest investment. Since Artemis can protect Ifrit and support her as well, I think she's the better option, but she's a relatively new luminary, which is why I place her behind Hades, right? Usually Vivian would doing better supporting either Pompey or Artemis in the squad, but if you want to maximize Ifrit and heavily invested in her, unlike the others on the list, then this might be the right setup. Especially the Talos and Artemis combo grant Ifrit a good amount of awakening stats. But of course, if you have Pompey, Divinity 3 and or Artemis Red 1, there is like no reason to enhance Ifrit in any way here. The good thing in the Arcane team setup, it doesn't get extremely special even in endgame. I think blue team has many options and different strategies to play, but when we want to focus Ifrit again, then this could be a possible lineup, which, to be honest, hasn't got like almost any changes besides from implementing Artemis now. And Heracles, who is mainly here because of her enhanced physical defense reduction, right? And the only thing is that there is a character in a couple of months called Himiko that is basically as or even stronger than Jing for blue and white team, right? She is an exceptional carry that deals insane damage while also providing utility for the team. And her scaling numbers tenfolds the ones of Ifrit. I'm not kidding. But she will take a while to arrive, presumably. So after looking at her entire kit, let's quickly summarize what stood out to me. Starting with the positives, Ifrit is an extremely and incredibly strong early game carry. She dominates story, PvE and even arena thanks to her excellent AoE damage and requires very little support from the rest of the team. Another huge advantage is how easy she is to obtain. since she's available anytime in the God King medal shop and also through Affinity right from the start. Investing into her Divinity is much more realistic than it is for most other luminaries. I also like how self-sufficient she is. Her star upgrades and Noble Phantasm allow her to scale almost entirely on her own, making her extremely beginner friendly. On the other hand, there are also a few things holding her back. The biggest issue is her lack of team synergy. Outside of physical defense down, she doesn't really provide meaningful buffs or debuffs, which make it difficult for her to contribute beyond her own damage. She also relies quite heavily on her Divinity and especially her Noble Phantasm to stay competitive. Without these upgrades, her damage starts falling off behind fairly quickly. And finally, what makes her so strong in the early game, being completely self-sufficient, is ironically one of the reasons she falls off later on. This is why she got completely replaced by now in most team setups, and you have to go out of your way to make her work. Which brings us to the most important question of this review. How far should you actually invest into Ifrit? As always, the answer depends on your spending level and your personal goals. In my opinion, Red 1 is more than enough for the vast majority of players. She will comfortably carry you through all PvE content while allowing you to save your diamonds for the much stronger characters that are still coming to the global server. I would only recommend pushing her Divinity and Noble Phantasm if you are a heavy spender, aiming for high early game rankings, or simply want to unlock the Scarlet Witch skin. Compared to the beginning of global servers, Ifrit is no longer a mandatory investment. We now have characters like Vermilion Bird, Asmodeus and Janwu that provide much more long-term value and can carry teams well into the endgame. So if you don't mind being a little weaker during the first few weeks, I would strongly recommend saving those resources. In the long run, your account will almost certainly benefit from it. Taking everything into account, I'm giving Ifrit a B tier. She's an excellent early game carry, incredibly beginner friendly, and still one of the easiest luminaries to build. However, her lack of team utility and the power creep we've seen over the past month make it difficult to justify heavy investment nowadays. If you're looking for someone to carry your account through the early game, she's still a fantastic choice. Just don't feel pressure to invest everything into her. You will get much more value by planning ahead for future releases. If you enjoyed this review or found it helpful, I would really appreciate it if you could leave a like and let me know your thoughts about Ifrit in the comments below. I know this video might not help most people because they are way past the early game stage, but since there are no new units releasing soon, I thought it would be a perfect time to get into reviewing her for starters. If my motivation isn't burnt out after making this video ready, then I will sit on Marilys next. Thanks to you guys, there are definitely some characters next in line, and I will spend any free time in order to make these videos for you. And as always, if there's another character you'd like to see me cover next, feel free to leave your suggestion as well. Thank you guys so much for watching, take care, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye guys.